Over the last couple of months, I've been reviewing EnGenius products, including some of their network switches and their wireless access points. And today I have one of their power distribution units, PDUs. And is their ECP106 is the model number for this. It's their smaller PDU. They have two different ones. And these are cloud smart managed PDU, and I believe that has a local web interface as well, so you don't have to cloud manage it. So I thought it'd be interesting to check out a PDU because I haven't reviewed any before. A typical PDU, it just provides power and some surge protection, but this also has smart capabilities for energy monitoring and turning the plugs on and off remotely. And you can do that through their web interface or through their cloud application. So the PDU comes in a nice little box. It has the picture of the PDU on it. And it's also packaged really well. You can see I already took it out to save some time. All right, so here's the PDU. It looks like a standard power strip with like 6 power plugs here. And it has a factory reset button with 2 LEDs to let you know that you're protected or grounded. And it has 2 network interfaces here, which is kind of interesting because you could probably connect these to 2 different networks as a, if you want to failover, or backup network, or you have 2 different management networks for whatever reason. These are designed more for businesses and enterprises than home networks. So there's probably, a good need to have connectivity to more than one network at a time, if nothing else, redundancy. So, and then there's a power button here. And then there's 2 buttons here that you can control this display. There's a little LED display here. And then there's a button here to reset the PDU and the plug itself, to plug it into the wall. And there's actually not too much else on the bottom. You get your little barcode you can scan, probably has the serial number. A lot of these cloud managed devices, you can scan this into your cloud application, and you can get stuff added very quickly without having to type in a bunch of serial numbers to add it to your network. I already mounted the 2 rack ears onto this PDU. So it comes with 2 longer brackets, which is interesting because you can mount this different ways. So if you look at this PDU, you can mount it like this, where if you want to off the ground or off the wall, you can mount it like this, or you can put it up, vertically. Let's see. I'm trying to do it in the video here, but you can mount it vertically like this and hang it down under a desk. And it looks like there's holes on the top and bottom of this, so you could mount 2 PDUs or maybe even a network switch. Because it looks like the holes are the same as a regular network switch mounting bracket. So that would be kind of interesting. You can mount your this is basically like a 2U bracket, so you can connect the network switch here and a power distribution unit underneath or above it. And if you want to put it on your desk, you can just have a network switch with some power right there at your workstation, which would be convenient. So there's some flexibility with these mounting options. Of course, it comes with a power cord, it's a very thick power cable, so it can handle probably a lot of power. I just about dropped it. It comes with 2 little pads you can put it if you want to put it on the bottom of this. So if you just want to set this on some surface you don't want to scratch, so you can use those. It's black matte pads there. And it comes with some screws if you want to mount this to the wall, so that's nice too as well. And these screw heads look like they're big enough that you can just take these rack ears. They're compatible with the rack mount. These will fit on there as well, and it comes with some washers, so you can really make sure it holds on tight. One feature that this has is like a safety feature where it says it has fireproof MOVs. I don't know if they pronounce that as MOVs or just call it MOVs, but basically cheaper power switches don't have fireproof ones, and if you get a surge coming through, these things can catch on fire. And so if you're worried about safety, having a more expensive, higher quality power supply could be beneficial, especially for a business when you're running a lot of rack equipment. But some people run a lot of equipment at their house, so it doesn't hurt to have a little extra surge safety features in this, and that could be one thing that might drive the cost of this a little bit higher if they have better quality components inside to protect against surges and fires. So this would be beneficial for that extra protection. You have to justify if it's worth, this is currently $5.99, and for home networks that'd be a little bit of a harder sell. But if you're running a small home office that you want to remotely control and monitor these outlets and the amount of power usage and be able to turn them on and off remotely, you may want to have these kind of features and capabilities in a more expensive, nicer PDU than just that one that just supplies power and basic surge protection. One interesting feature of this PDU is after it boots up, you can set a delay for each of the outlets to power on. So you can stagger the power on sequence for your PDU, which is nice to have if you have several devices that consume a lot of power and you don't want them all to surge on at one time. You can see how it's lighting up each outlet as I scroll by there. And if I turn off the PDU, you'll see that each one of them also shuts down one at a time as well. All right, I'm going to show you what the standalone web interface looks like and give you a quick walkthrough of that before I do the cloud interface, because I need to add the device to the cloud interface. And once you add it to the cloud interface, it typically disables your standalone web interface. So that's why I want to do the standalone web interface first. So it's admin is the default username and password. I found the IP address of this machine by just looking at my DHCP leases on my router. So you could do that as well. So this is the dashboard for the ECP106 PDU. This is very similar to the EnGenius dashboard that we looked at for the switches in a previous video. It has like the serial number, MAC address, and it has some basic stats. Like since this is a PDU, instead of traffic stats, it's going to be wattage, amperage, and voltage, as well as the power frequency. So before I did this video, I connected my entire server rack to this PDU so I can get an overall usage of my server rack. So if I scroll down, this chart's pretty neat because it shows the total peak wattage and amperage. You can see I was peaking at 444 watts, and the low on this chart is maybe around 370 watts, and the amperage, the peak was for 4.19 amps. So if I scroll down to the bottom, you'll see a list of all of the outlets that I have. I named each of these outlets for what is plugged into it, which is very convenient to have these labeled so you know which outlet is doing what. Especially if you want to remotely control these power outlets, you definitely want to know what's on each one. So naming the outlets is very critical. You can see if it's enabled or not, and if it's never power off, there's an option for that. So you can always keep the outlets on for critical things you don't want to be shut off accidentally. You can see the current and power consumed, and there's a power on and a power off delay option for each of these outlets. So you can stagger when these are turning on. So if you have a lot of high power devices, you don't have to surge it all on at one time. It's nice that you can stagger the load. I do like that ability is in there if you need it, because that's an advanced ability that you don't get normally on a basic standard PDU. And on this connected device column, you can change these icons so you can make it more descriptive. You can say if it's an adapter, a wired or wireless device, just to kind of to make it a little more interesting here. And you can see if there's a schedule set for these outlets, you can turn them on and off periodically, which is nice if you want to have some outlets that are scheduled. So you could shut off the routers or modem, whatever, at night. And if you're a business, especially for home users, maybe you want to shut them off at night when you're not using stuff and shut stuff back and turn stuff back on. A couple other things on this dashboard to note is at the top here, you can drop this down. You can see which outlets have power on or off. Just a quick little summary there if you want to see which ones have power running to them. That might be useful, but you have this little table down here, which is more descriptive, but that's just a quick glance. You also have this dark mode and light mode that you can use. So if you really want dark mode, you can do that. And there's also this search option for different menu options, so you can jump to things really quickly. But there's not a lot of menu options on this PDU compared to like a network switch. I think that would be a little bit more useful for a network switch. Let's go over to the menu. You can expand this out if you want to see the names of the menus. Otherwise, you can just close this out just to save space. And so if we go to the configure, we can go to system settings. You can see the device name, and you can give it a location. The IP address is just DHCP by default. You can give it a static IP, which for networking devices that are part of your core infrastructure, some people like to set static IPs on these devices, which is not a bad idea, because if your DHCP server is down and you just really need to get connected to something, it's good to have a static IP so you can still reach your devices, if your lease is timeout. So you can see the system time here. It's set to this time zone here. Let's go up to outlets. This is similar to what we saw on the dashboard, but you can edit each of these. So if I go to this power monitoring one, so if you go to edit on that outlet, you can see here where you can enable, disable, and there's the option for never power off. And these are the different icons you have. You have wired device, wireless, printer, phone, adapter, and monitor. There's probably a couple of the categories would be nice if they had them, but this is just a general idea. You could just lump them in as a generic wired or wireless device or whatever if there's no icon for your specific device. So here's the power delay on and off options. So you can set it to 1 second if you want. So you can see that these power delays, it's 1 through 6 seconds. So the last one comes on 6 seconds after the PDU is turned on. So that's how these will turn on 1 second after each other until 6 seconds is elapsed, and everything will be turned on by then. You don't have to have these delays in there if you don't want, because there's an auto reboot option for this. You'll see that they're all turned off by default. So if we click the edit button, you'll see that we can enable this option for auto rebooting, and it requires an IP or host name. And this is for a website that the PDU will monitor, and if the website goes down, I can't connect to it anymore, it will reboot this outlet, basically turn it off and back on. So the idea is if you're hosting a web server on that outlet and the website goes down, you could try to reboot the machine automatically so that it'll bring itself back up. So it can hopefully you can self-heal your device there to bring it back online. This is kind of handy if you want things to kind of recover automatically. In a business environment, you probably want to have more redundancy than that. So for home use, this is actually a pretty cool, smart outlet PDU feature, because some people use it to say if their modem goes down, you can monitor an external website. If you can't reach it, it'll just reboot your modem. So that's where a lot of home users might want to use it, because some internet connections can get flaky with certain ISPs, and even ISPs that are pretty reliable, things happen sometimes. So that's a nice little feature to have. Let's click on the timeout settings, and if we click on this first outlet and click edit so we can see the options, this opens up more options for the auto reboot feature from the previous menu. You'll see that there's a ping interval. That's how often it's going to ping that website or host name that you have entered on that previous menu, so that it'll do it every 60 seconds by default. And then the delay time is how often in between it's going to do the reboots. And so by default, it'll try 5 times. So it'll reboot that device 5 times every 5 minutes, because this is set to 300 seconds. So you can configure these options to see how many times you want to restart your device to see if it will work, and how often the delay is in between. And then you have your interval, how often you want to ping your websites. So that's pretty cool. It gives you a little more granularity for how often you want this auto reboot feature to work. Now let's go over to schedule. This is where you can create your schedules for each of the outlets. You see there's 1 through 6 here. And you can just set, like, if you want certain devices shut off on the weekends for, say, a business, or in the middle of the night. For home users, you might want to shut off some stuff that's not being used. And the nice thing is, if you have it auto shut off, if you have your device configured to power on when power is restored, this should help you get that to be more automated, because you don't have to manually unplug the device, right, and to plug it back in for it to boot back up. That's one of the advantages of using a smart PDU versus just using a regular PDU. So to edit a schedule, you just click on the first one here and you click edit, and you'll see here's all of the different times of where it's available or not available. And so you have to turn on this option here to unlock these settings. So you can say you want it available between these times or unavailable between these times, and then it'll take care of turning stuff on and off for you. So that's pretty nice. You can get granular with this time schedule here. With this schedule, it looks like you can only set like 1 schedule per day, which that should be adequate for most people. But if you want to try to do it multiple times during the day, this may not get it for you. This PDU does come with a RESTful API. Perhaps you could control it better that way, but that requires a pro subscription, just so you know. All right, so let's go to firmware. This is basically where you can do some firmware updates, backup, restore. And you got SNMP, which is hard to tongue twister to say. A lot of devices have this, so you can monitor devices on your network. It's kind of a nice little logging mechanism. And then you got email alerts that you can use here to kind of give you some warnings if there's something out of the voltage safe range, power safe range, and current safe range. If there's something out of the ordinary there, you can get some emails. A good safety feature. And for here, you have logs and diagnostic tools. So look at the logs first. This tells you when the outlet was turned on and connected. You've got some system logs you can download, and syslog server. So if you have syslog, you can send all your reports over to a single centralized server, which is pretty cool. You got diagnostic tools. The diagnostic tools is like a full screen. We saw this with the network switch. It's like a full screen diagnostics tool, which is nice. You can see the CPU, memory, power usage of all the outlets or each individual, and you can click down here. And there's not as many diagnostic tools for this as there are with the network switch, but it's just a power, PDU. There's not as much going on with it. But you can ping different various websites here. You'll see the how the connectivity is to the internet. And there's a trace route here. You can trace, just more network connectivity diagnostics. This is a pretty interesting tool. And this is where you can create users or set up users that can access this PDU. And that's pretty much it. There's not like as many settings with network switch, but it's interesting to see all the things that you have available. So I'm going to use the EnGenius Cloud to Go app, which is how you can cloud manage your apps with your phone. But you can also log in via the web browser as well. But the nice thing about using your phone is you can scan a QR code instead of typing in a serial number. I've demonstrated before in other EnGenius videos how to add it via the serial number or the QR code, but I'm not going to show that in this one. I'm just going to scan the QR code here and register the device. I'm going to assign it to the network now. Next, finish. All right. Looks like it's on there now. So that's all it takes to add it to the cloud. So now I'm going to log into my cloud account. All right, so now I'm logged into the EnGenius Cloud account, and I'm going to go find my device. It should be over here under PDUs. So you can see here's the PDU listed. It has a serial number and MAC address and the LAN IP address, and it looks like there's a firmware update because there's a little icon there to update. And it tells you how many outlets are active and all that good stuff. If I hover over this, I can go to details, and then I can see pretty much the same information that we had on the standalone web interface. You can add a little photo here or whatever. Just if you have multiples of this, you can add photos to your different devices and locations to help you identify where it's at, which that could be helpful in a large business. You'll see we have the schedule and auto reboot options here. The interface looks a little bit different, but it's not a lot different. So you see there's some logs here. So it looks like the alert feature is a pro feature, which is interesting because I'm assuming that's email alerts possibly. And when I did it on the standalone web interface, the email alerts looks like I could enter something there. So maybe just to get cloud alerts, maybe it alerts your phone or something instead of just emailing it. So maybe that's a pro feature. So I just came back and I noticed the firmware version's upgraded, which is kind of cool, I guess. But hopefully that doesn't brick anything. If you had a device that upgraded the firmware automatically and you didn't tell it to, maybe there's an option here somewhere to not upgrade your firmware. But that's something to keep in mind that might potentially happen if you don't have a chance to set it in your configuration. One thing I noticed on some of the options here, you can connect to your device via SSH. And when you click on it, I'm not going to because you'll be able to connect to my home network here. But it brings up information that you can connect SSH via their cloud interface, and it'll connect into your device here. And I'm assuming since it's routing through their servers, you don't need to open up anything on your end of the network. So it must do a reverse tunnel type thing. So the way it's tunneled through their servers, I'm assuming you should be able to get direct access with SSH, and they give you the details in this randomized hostname string from their cloud. So the only other thing to show is if you go to the configure interface, and you'll see there's a PDU menu, but the only thing that's available there is a templates option, and that's a pro feature. I'm assuming templates are configuration that you can reuse across multiple PDUs. So if you have several server racks and you want to replicate the configuration between the different PDUs, I'm guessing that's what that would be for. But since I don't have the pro subscription to look at, I don't know what that actually does yet. EnGenius has told me you can get 1 year free to try out some things, but I don't know if I want to use it for this PDU. I might use it later just to play around with some other features that I might do. Maybe I do a separate video or something on it. If I just want to tinker around a little bit. So I just logged back into my standalone web interface to show you that if you set this device up with the cloud account, it locks out the configuration for the standalone web interface, so it doesn't have to worry about syncing that information back and forth. So if you want to do standalone, you can't sync it to the cloud. But if you want to control the cloud, you lose a lot of your standalone web interface controls. So you'll see if I go to system settings, I can still change some system settings and IP addressing. I can change a couple of these things, but I can't set any of the smart features. I can't change the name of my outlets or do any of that stuff. So whatever it's set to, it's set to. So all this configuration down here, you lose that ability once you go to the cloud. So this is kind of interesting. I noticed there's a standalone mode option here. You can click on this and it says it'll disconnect you from the cloud, but you'll be able to connect it, configure the outlets locally. So maybe you could switch. I don't know if you could switch back and forth without having to re-add the device to the cloud, but basically EnGenius only wants you to configure your device either on one or the other and not both. One other thing to note when you log in with your standalone web interface after you connect it to the cloud, if you have a different password set for your default admin account for your local device password in the cloud, once you connect it there, it will no longer be admin. It'll be admin and whatever password you have set. I forgot about that when I logged in here. So just be aware if you go back to log into your standalone web interface, the password will be set to whatever local password you have defined in your configuration for the cloud. I hope you found the video on this PDU interesting. It's something different that I haven't really got to review yet before. And it's kind of nice to check out some other components that also you can use in your home network, like say in your network rack, besides just your networking equipment, because there's other things that go into this, is like UPSs and surge protectors and PDUs and all those sorts of things are also important equipment. They might not be quite as glamorous and exciting or fun to play with, perhaps, as say your network switches, or especially get those mini PCs and run your firewalls and stuff like that. But these are important components to consider when you're building out your network rack that you might not want to overlook, and you might want to invest some cost into it. It's not very glamorous, but it's important if you want to have safety and good quality power going into your network rack. So until next time, I'll see you guys later.